Welcome back in our second session. And we were talking about managing dismissals. Foster a perception of fairness in the dismissal situation. That is our concern. And we should be doing that by instituting a formal multi-step procedure, which may also include warning. The second point can be having a supervising manager give full explanations of why and how termination decisions were made. And remember that you should be able to establish a neutral appeal procedure and process which fosters fairness. Now, avoiding wrongful discharge suits is our concern. And we will be looking at basis for wrongful discharge suits, which would include number one, discharge does not comply with the law, or discharge does not comply with the contractual arrangement stated or implied by the firm via its employment application forms, employee manuals, and other promises. So, when we are avoiding wrongful discharge suits, remember to set up employment policies and dispute resolution procedures that make employees feel treated fairly, and do the preparatory work that helps to avoid such suits. There are certain steps in avoiding wrongful discharge suits. The first step is that have applicants sign the employment application and make sure it contains a clearly worded statement that employment is for no fixed term and that the employer can terminate at any time. Second point can be review your employee manual to look for and delete statements that could prejudice your defense in a wrongful discharge case. Remember to have clear written rules listing infractions that may require discipline and discharge, and then make sure to follow the rules. If a rule is broken, get the worker's side of the story in front of witnesses and preferably get it signed. Then make sure to check out the story, getting both sides of the issue. Another important point is that be sure to appraise employees at least annually. If an employee shows evidence of incompetence, give that person a warning and provide an opportunity to improve. All evaluations should be in writing and signed by the employee. And obviously, you should be careful about keeping careful confidential records of all actions such as employee appraisals, warnings and notices, memos outlining how improvement should be accomplished, and so on. Now, there is a 10-step checklist which would be talking about steps in avoiding wrongful discharge suits. And those 10-step checklist points are: number one, is employee covered by any type of written agreement, including a collective bargaining agreement, which is in relation with the CBA, collective bargaining agents, and the labor unions. Two, have any representations been made to form a contract? Three, is a defamation claim likely? Four, is there a possible discrimination allegation? Five, Is there any workers' compensation involvement? 6, have reasonable rules and regulations been communicated and enforced? 7, has employee been given an opportunity to explain any rule violations or to correct poor performance? 8, have all monies been paid within 24 hours after separation? And 9, has employee been advised of his or her rights under law? And 10, has employee been advised of what the employer will tell a prospective employer in response to a reference inquiry? So these are the points which are talking about wrongful discharge suits. And we should be very much careful that when we are talking about such discharge factors, issues, and violations, we should always be concerned with legal aspects, that whatever would be the state laws and what are the organizational policies and concerns. These are the things which are of utmost importance for us to consider, that we should be avoiding wrongful discharge suits. Now, personal supervisory liability is talking about avoiding personal supervisory liability. And how can we do that? We should be familiar with federal, state, and local statutes and know how to uphold their requirements. Follow company policies and procedures, as I was telling you. Be consistent application of the rule or regulation. You should be consistent with application of the rule or regulation, and that is very important. Don't administer discipline in a manner that adds to the emotional hardship on the employee. Do not act in anger, and utilize the HR department for advice regarding how to handle difficult disciplinary matters. Now, supposedly, if the stage has come when the termination would be taking place, so the termination interview would be there, and we should be planning for the interview carefully, which would include the following steps. For example, make sure the employee keeps the appointment time. Never inform an employee over the phone. Allow 10 minutes as sufficient time for the interview. Use a neutral site, never your own office. Have employee agreements, the human resource file, and release announcement, internal and external, prepared in advance. Be available at time after the interview in case questions or problems arise, and have phone numbers ready for medical and security emergencies, because people can get violent and they might be angry. So we should be there to take the precautionary measures. Now, during the termination interview, get to the point. Do not beat around the bush by talking about the weather or making other small talk. As soon as the employee enters, give the reason, a moment to get comfortable, and then inform him or her of your decision. You should be always there to describe the situation, briefly explain why the person is being let go. Remember to describe the situation rather than attack the employee personally, and emphasize that the decision is final and irrevocable. Now, as a convention of the termination interview, you should always be listening as well. So continue the interview until the person appears to be talking freely and reasonably, calmly about the reasons for his or her termination and the support package, which may include severance pay. Review all elements of the severance package, describe severance payments, benefits, access to office support people, and the way references will be handled. However, under no conditions should any promises or benefits beyond those already in the support package be employed. And we should be careful about these things. Identify the next step. The terminated employee may be disoriented and unsure what to do next. So you should be there to explain where the employee should go next upon leaving the interview. You should be providing termination assistance, which includes a very interesting concept known as outplacement counseling, which means a systematic process by which a terminated employee is trained and counseled in the techniques of conducting a self-appraisal and securing a new job appropriate to his or her needs and talents. And in that context, outplacement does not imply that the employer takes responsibility for placing the person in a new job. And outplacement counseling is part of the terminated employee's support or severance package and is often done by specialized outside firms. So when we talk about outplacement firms, remember that they can help the employer devise its dismissal plan regarding how to break the news to dismissed employees, deal with dismissed employees' emotional reactions, and institute the appropriate severance pay and equal opportunity employment plans. So you can also be there to interview departing employees. We can arrange an exit interview, and it's aimed to elicit information about the job or related matters that might give the employer a better insight into what is right or wrong about the company. And the assumption is that because the employee is leaving, he or she will be candid. And the quality of information gained from exit interviews is questionable many a times, because the employee might be disgruntled, might be angry, and we cannot just blindly rely on the information provided during the exit interview. But whatever information would be provided, we need to be careful and we need to analyze all the facts narrated during the interview. Now, there are certain exit interview questions. For example, how were you recruited? Why did you join the company? Was the job presented correctly or honestly? Were your expectations met? What was the workplace environment like? What was your supervisor's management style like? How did you like most or least amount about the company? Were there any special problem areas? Or we can also ask, why did you decide to leave and how was the departure handled? So that we can further refine our policies and procedures. Now let's talk about layoffs. Remember that layoffs are not terminations. The temporary layoffs occur when there is no work available for employees. Management expects the no work situation to be temporary and probably short term, and management intends to call the employees when work is again available. And there can also be a situation of bumping in which we have to talk about layoff procedures. So remember that seniority is usually the ultimate determinant of who will work. And seniority can give way to merit or ability, but usually only when no senior employee is qualified for a particular job. Another important point is that seniority is usually based on the date the employee joined the organization, not the date he or she took a particular job. And company-wide seniority allows an employee in one job to bump or displace an employee in another job, provided the more senior person can do the job without further training. Now, there are certain alternatives to layoffs, which may include voluntarily reducing employees' pay to keep everyone working, concentrating employees' vacations during slow periods, taking voluntary time off to reduce the employer's payroll, taking a rings of defense approach by hiring temporary workers that can be let go early, and offering buyout packages to find enough volunteers to avoid dismissing people. In case of adjusting to downsizing and mergers, there are certain guidelines we need to look at, and the guideline for implementing a reduction in force would include: number one, identify objectives and constraints, form a downsizing team, address legal issues, plan post-reduction actions, and address security concerns. Now, further talking about the guidelines for treatment of departing employees during a merger, it may include: avoid the appearance of power and domination, avoid win-lose behavior, remain business-like and professional, maintain a positive feeling about the acquired company, and obviously remember that how the organization treats the acquired group will affect those who remain. So that was all about the chapter from the book. Now we'll be focusing upon certain important topics which would further enhance our understanding and knowledge about the human resource. So the first topic I have selected is human capital management. And when we define human capital management, it goes like: the provision of guidance on effective people management by the systematic analysis, measurement, and evaluation of how people policies and practices create value. So the human capital management aims at 3 levels. The first is obtain, analyze, and report on data that inform the direction of HR strategies and procedures and processes, obviously. That would be leading us towards use measurements to prove that superior human resource management strategies and processes deliver superior results. And that would also be in relation with reinforcing the belief that human resource management strategies and processes create value through people. So we have to focus on the people side when we need to come up with human capital management plans. Now, the significance of human capital would be discussed. It may include the knowledge, skills, and abilities of individuals that create value, which is why the focus has to be on means of attracting, retaining, developing, and maintaining the human capital they present, thus producing a human capital tool that cannot be imitated or substituted by rivals, and that would obviously be becoming your core competency. And that would also be discussed in terms of human capital advantage that results from employing people with competitively valuable knowledge and skills. And once we do that, its association would be resulting into competitive advantage. And then obviously we'll be trying to make that competitive advantage sustainable. Now, there are certain human capital management questions we need to address. The first question is, what are the key performance drivers that create value? The second question can be, what skills have we got? The third question can be, what skills do we need? Then we can also talk about, how are we going to get, develop, and keep these skills? How can we capture, record, and use the knowledge we create? And last but not the least, how can we develop a learning culture? So these are all the concerns we should be addressing when we'll be talking about human capital management. Now, there are certain approaches to measurement, and that would include analyzing sources of value. We need to analyze relationships between people management practices and outcomes and organizational effectiveness. There should be measures which are impacting the people management practices on performance, not just the efficiency of the HR function. We have to keep the measurement simple. Only measure activities if it contributes to decision making. Analyze trends, not just actuals. Focus on easily available quantified data. And remember, measurement is a means to an end, not an end in itself. And for that purpose, we need to go for making things smart. We need to go for calculating HR matrices. We need to translate our objectives in terms of KRA, KPA, and KPIs. So there is a whole procedure involved when we need to talk about measurements in association with human capital management. So there are certain measurement elements we need to talk about now. The first is basic workforce data, which would include demographic, race, age, working arrangement, absence and sickness, turnover and pay. The second concern can be related to people development and performance data, which would include learning and development programs, performance, potential assessments, skills and qualifications. And there can be perceptual data related to attitude and opinion surveys, focus groups, exit interviews, and performance data related to finance, operations, and the customer related information. So these are the measurement elements which would provide us the basis for calculating our human capital management perspectives. And there can be certain non-financial variables as well, which can include quality of corporate strategy, execution of corporate strategy, management credibility, innovation, research leadership, ability to attract and retain talented people, market share, alignment of compensation with shareholders' interests, and obviously quality of major business processes. So for the whole scenario, we can develop the context of the scorecard technique, the balanced scorecard, which we are just looking at right now, and the balanced scorecard, which would show us the business performance in terms of quantified data. The balanced scorecard would be talking about four main things. The first one is customer perspective, that how do customers see us? The second is financial perspective, how do we appear to our shareholders? The third can be innovation and planning perspective, which is people perspective as well, which would include, can we continue to improve and add value? And all these would be in association with internal perspective, which is what must we excel at. So in this relation, when we are talking about balanced scorecard, we need to look upon the HR scorecard in particular. And the HR scorecard would be talking about four aspects: HR competencies, HR deliverables, HR system, and HR practices. And these are all having the strategic focus in terms of operational excellence, product leadership, and customer intimacy. Now remember that when we talk about HR competencies, we are concerned with administrative experience, employee advocacy, strategy execution, and change agency. When we talk about HR deliverables, it would include the workforce mindset, technical knowledge, and workforce behavior. When we are talking about HR practices, so communication, work design, selection, development, measurement, rewards, these are all part of HR practices. And concerning to HR systems, remember there should be alignment, integration, and differentiation for us. Now there are certain human capital reports, and those reports can be established through the following procedure and steps. The first point is set out quantitative and qualitative information. The second can be set out measures of employee satisfaction and engagement. Third, analyze benchmark data. 4, identify key performance drivers and indicate how human capital management is creating added value in these areas. 5, review how well HR strategy and practice are contributing to achieving business goals. 6, set out returns on investment in people management programs. And 7, draw conclusions on implications of HR strategy and practice. So that's how human capital reports can be maintained. Now there are certain practical implications for human capital management, and the practical implications would include high performance working, talent management, human resource development, performance management, reward management, knowledge management. These are the concerns which are practical implications of human capital management and its related discussion. So I would stop my discussion of the second session over here, and we'll be joining our third session to cover up other topics which we have planned for today, like the knowledge management, like the corporate social responsibility. So these are very important concerns. So join the third session for our further orientation about HR.